Hi, I'm George Sullivan with What Do You Know? So today we're talking about the Cascade and fill station that we have here over at Western Rose Fire Department. We're going to go over the three things that we need to go on with this unit. We're going to talk about how it is two different units. We have a compressor and a Cascade system. And along with that, we're going to go over how to inspect the Cascade system that we commonly do on Saturday morning checks. We're also going to go over how to fill a bottle off the Cascade system. And then we're also lastly going to go over how to refill the Cascade system using the compressor. So let's start off with our inspection of the compression system. First thing that you need to do over on a Saturday is check the oil inside the unit. If you open up the cover, you'll see that there's a dipstick right in here. It should be filled with a clear oil, should not be discolored. And if you can look, you can see that it is inside the middle in between the fill and the add line right there. Okay? You should use a clean cloth to clean this. Shouldn't use a rag or a dirty cloth. After that's done, you should look around inside the cabinet and the box, make sure there's no leaking oil, obvious deformities, discolorations inside the unit. Okay? Next thing you'll want to do on a Saturday morning check, you're going to want to check the pressure gauges. You can check the pressure gauges over on the compressor side. Make sure that there is no deformity, breakage inside any of the units. If there is an excessive amount of humidity in the compressor, the yellow light would most likely be on. After that, we're going to want to come over and check the Cascade system over here. On the Cascade fill side, the fill side of the unit, we'll want to check the level of the compressed air inside each unit. When it's full, each unit should be approximately 6,000 PSI. The lowest should be on Cascade 1 through 3. We'll go over the operation of the fill station later on, but it should always be the lowest should be number 1 and the highest pressure should be number 3. As you can see, we're down to 4,000 PSI on number 1, 48 over on unit 2, and we have 56 on the Cascade bottle number 3. We should also make sure that when we inspect over on Saturdays when we aren't filling, make sure that the regulator is zeroed out. There's no pressure behind the system. This preserves the regulator. Make sure that the spring isn't worn out or abused. And last two things that we're going to check, we're going to make sure that there is no obvious deformity in the back of the unit where the 3 bottles are hooked up. To the rear of the fill station, we have 3 bottles. Right now, all the bottles are open and the flow is controlled by the gauges in the front of the unit. If you have leakage back when you're filling the station, there might be damage to the fill hoses in the back. And now we'll go over onto the last thing that we'll want to inspect on a Saturday morning. And the last thing we're going to check on Saturday is to make sure that our pressure relief hose is inside a containment bucket. This will hold any fluid that will come off when the relief valve goes off. You want to make sure that it's not over full and that the hose is located in the hole. Okay? And it's never a bad idea to check to make sure that there's not a fault light over on our carbon monoxide detector. Okay, well that's it that we're going to do for the Saturday inspection of our compressor and Cascade fills. Okay, next thing we're going to do inside this is we're going to fill some SCBA bottles from our Cascade fill station. It's always a good idea to wear gloves when you do this. There's compressed air involved, and we'll be operating valves that do have a release. First thing we'll do is, whether it's on a Saturday test or after a fire, we might have a bottle that's low. Our standard is that we should fill all bottles that are below 4,400 PSI. If you can see here, this bottle is around 3,900 PSI. Now, if you look at our Cascade system, our first bottle has less pressure than our SCBA bottle. We aren't going to use this one on this fill. We do have more than the pressure that's in this bottle. We're right about the same pressure on our Cascade number 2, and we'll have enough to finish out the fill on Cascade number 3. So first we have to do So we'll have to lift the locking gate over on the fill chamber. We'll pull out the hose. We're gonna make sure there's no deformities on the hose. Make sure that our bleed off valve is all the way closed by closing it clockwise. We're gonna look to make sure that our O-ring, which is a white ring over at the tip there, is intact. And we're gonna look to make sure our threads aren't obviously damaged. Same with our bottle. We're gonna make sure our threads aren't damaged before we place it on. If you take the center nipple, place it inside the threads, and then making sure that you don't use any pressure at all to avoid cross threading. We'll tighten this hand tight, snug, but not force tight. Snug. Open our bottle, open it fully. Place the bottle while making sure not to tangle the fill hose into the container. And we're able to fill 2 bottles at the same time. So we have a second bottle that we're going to fill today. Place the bottle in. Close the locking mechanism on the chamber. Snug. The unit will not operate unless the gate is down. So for us to start, we're going to have to make sure that we're able to reach 4,400 pounds, which is going to be over in the red zone, 4,400 to 4,500 pounds. We're going to have to do that by setting our regulator. First thing we'll have to do is we'll have to open up a Cascade unit that's over that pressure. I want to open it slowly. That was a little fast that I did that on. Open it fully. And we'll want to turn the valve clockwise until we reach our desired pressure. If we're filling another department's units that are low pressure, you'll see a blue line here to fill the 2,200 bottles that might be used by a lower pressure bottle. And as we go up, you want to take your time the closer you get to our pressure. And there we are. Now, before we start filling our bottles, we want to talk a little bit about whether to avoid a hot filling. Hot filling happens when the air is transferred quickly, causes friction in the airline, causes the air to expand, thereby you won't get a proper fill. So you'll want to fill the bottle slowly. Never open the fill valves below these gauges quickly. So let's gently crack them to start off with. We can fill 2 at one time. And you can hear the air moving over. Okay? Well, it's not that exciting. You can turn it just a little bit more. You never want to hear a quick race of air. Every once in a while you want to check, look up over at your gauges. We'll see that Cascade 2 has dropped since we've started. But it looks like it's going to get the job done. If we were not able to get up to our proper pressure, we could shut down our Cascade and open up the next greater pressure Cascade bottle. But it looks like we're making it. You can hear the air slowing down. And then we are going to shut the unit off. We're just going to make the valve snug, not tight. We made both snug. If you have more bottles to fill, you can proceed to taking your bottles out right now. Currently, right now, we're done. We also want to shut down our Cascade. Shut it all the way off. And at this time, we can also bleed off the pressure from the regulator if we aren't going to fill any more bottles. And that's going to be accomplished by turning the valve counterclockwise, and you'll hear an air release. As soon as all the air pressure is released, you'll feel the valve will spin freely. Okay, and we'll double check to make sure we have these closed, snug but not tight. We'll open up our locking mechanism, open up our containment system. We'll take the bottles, making sure not to get our heads directly over the valves. We can close our valves in here. snug, not tight. And then we can slowly relieve the pressure by turning the valve counterclockwise. There's an opening on the back. That's the reason why we're wearing gloves. If we're having to get a great deal of pressure there and open it too quickly, it could damage the unit. Pressure's been bled off. Re-snug the valve cover. Open up the... You may find you should place the hose in there a little bit more slowly than that. You may find that the bottle may feel a little warm. Right now it's not feeling warm, which meant that we avoided hot filling. You'll see the pressure is at the appropriate level, 4,400 PSI. The bottle's ready to go and be placed back inside service. Okay, the final operation that we'll have to do with our fill station Cascade and our pressurizing unit is we're gonna have to go through and we're gonna have to recharge our Cascade bottles. You'll still wanna do the standard checks that you normally do on Saturday before you operate this unit. You're gonna wanna make sure that there's oil in the unit before we get started. Make sure there's no deformities or discolorations inside the compressor area. You wanna make sure that your overflow hose is in place inside the bottle. And then before we get started, we have two things we need to do. First, we have to make sure that the air is clear in here. What does that involve? That involves that no trucks are running in the engine house or next to the engine house. We have fresh air intakes over on the outside of the building to the south parking lot. But if we have a truck running in the engine bay or if we have a truck running outside, the contaminants could get inside our breathing air and it would make it so we would have dirty air breathing inside the fire. So we need to make sure that there's no motors running in the area. If there is an emergency call that comes out during the fill operation, we can shut down the system so we don't suck up that air. And after all engines are off, we can start the fill operation again. So we've checked to make sure that we still had oil. We checked to make sure everything's filled outside. We're going to continue to play safe. This is going to be a loud operation. If people are in the office here on the administrative deck, want to make sure that that door is closed. We don't want to operate this unit with most people over on the bay floor, so we're going to want to make sure that there's only one or two people on the bay floor, and the people that are there, we're going to want to be wearing hearing protection during this operation. You can have other hearing protection other than these foam earplugs, but these seem to work the best. We're only going to fill one Cascade bottle at a time. We aren't going to fill all three at once. So the first step that we're going to do is we're going to turn over the CO monitor on. It's going to run through a self-check. It's going to beep for about 15 seconds. And then we can turn on the unit. While we're making video, but you'll notice that the green normal light's on. There's no notification of high CO2. We have no extra humidity. And we're only going to fill one bottle at a time. So we'll open up one bottle, and the compressor will automatically shut off when it gets to 6,000 PSI. When it shuts off, we'll know to come down, shut off that bottle. And just lightly close it. You can see I have a light grip on it and I allow my fingers to slide. Then we'll open up the next one, open the valve all the way. And then when it reaches 6,000 PSI, we'll shut it off slowly and only with a light grip, allowing our fingers to slide so we do not over tighten the valve. And we'll complete that also on the third bottle of the Cascade fill. When all these operations are complete, you can shut off the unit as we did before by closing the safety device, shutting off the toggle, and shutting off the CO detector. That will complete the filling of the Cascade bottles from the compressor system. Often you'll come and you'll find that the humidity light is on the unit. This does not affect the quality of air that comes from the Cascade bottles. So the Cascade bottles can still be filled off the bottles over in the Cascade system. Also, it doesn't affect the quality of air that comes from the compressor. It's just telling you that in the compressor motor itself, there seems to be a fair amount of water. If you run the Cascade, allowing it to fill a bottle, that normally it blows off any extra humidity that's in the system and the light will go off. If you find that after you fill the bottle it doesn't go off, you can try draining some more air out of one of the Cascade bottles and run it a little bit longer. If this persists, you can contact Assistant Chief Boehner or myself, Battalion Chief George Sullivan, and we will see about having it looked at. For a quick recap of everything we talked about today, we talked about inspecting the unit. The most important thing in there is making sure that we have oil in the unit, we don't have leaking oil inside. The second thing we talked about is filling bottles over off the Cascade system. Most important thing inside there is making sure that we aren't cross-threaded or overly tightening our valves. And then we talked about filling our Cascade from the compressor. And the important things to remember about that is you want to inspect it first before you run it. Fill one bottle at a time, and not to worry if the high humidity light is on. You can usually blow by all the humidity and only worry if the red light comes on. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact Chief Boehner or myself, George Sullivan. Now, you do know about the Cascade and fill station at the Webster Groves Fire Department. Have a great day.